Douglas, born Frederick Augustus Washington Bailey, was born in February 1818. He was an African-American social reformer, orator, writer, and statesman. Bailey was born into slavery in Talbot County, Maryland, and named by his mother, Harriet Bailey. His birthplace was likely his grandmother's shack, but the exact date of his birth is unknown. He later chose to celebrate it on February the 14th. Years later, after escaping to the north, he took the surname Douglas, having already dropped use of his two middle names. Early age, Douglas was separated from his mother and ended up living with his maternal grandmother, Betty Bailey. His mother died when he was about 10. At age 7, he was separated from his grandmother and moved to the Y House Plantation. He worked for Aaron Anthony. When Anthony died, Douglas was given to Lucretia Odd, wife of Thomas Odd, who sent him to serve Thomas' brother Hugh Odd in Baltimore. When Douglas was about 12 years old, Hugh Odd's wife Sophia started teaching him the alphabet, even though it was prohibited for them to teach slaves how to read. Douglas described Sophia as a kind and tender-hearted woman who treated him the way one human being ought to treat another. When Sophia's husband discovered her activity on teaching Douglas to read, he strongly disapproved, saying that if a slave learned to read, he would become dissatisfied with his condition and desire freedom. Douglas continued secretly to teach himself how to read and write. He often said, "Knowledge is the pathway from slavery to freedom." Douglas began to read newspapers, political materials, and books of every description. He was exposed to a new realm of thought that led him to question and condemn the institution of slavery. In later years, Douglas credited the Columbian Orator, which he discovered at about age 12, with clarifying and defining his views on freedom and human rights. Douglas was hired out to William Freeland. There he taught other slaves on the plantation to read the New Testament at a weekly Sunday school. As word spread, the interest among slaves in learning to read was so great that in any week, more than 40 slaves would attend lessons. For about 6 months, their study went relatively unnoticed. When Freeland remained complacent about their activities, other plantation owners became incensed about their slaves being educated. One Sunday, they burst in on the gathering, armed with clubs and stones, to disperse the congregation permanently. In 1837, Douglas met and fell in love with Anna Murray, a free black woman in Baltimore about 5 years older than he was. Her free status strengthened his belief in the possibility of gaining his own freedom. On September 3, 1838, Douglas successfully escaped by boarding a train to Maryland, dressed in a sailor's uniform provided to him by Murray, who also gave him part of her savings to cover his travel costs. Once Douglas had arrived, he sent for Anna to follow him to New York. She brought with her the necessary basis for them to set up a home. They were married on September 15, 1838. The couple settled in Massachusetts. While there, Douglas joined a black church, the African Methodist Episcopal Zion Church, and became a licensed preacher in 1839. In 1840, Douglas delivered a speech in New York, then a station on the Underground Railroad, which years later led to the formation of a black congregation. In 1843, Douglas joined other speakers in the American Anti-Slavery Society Hundreds Convention Project, a 6-month tour at meeting halls throughout the eastern and midwestern United States. During this tour, slavery supporters frequently accosted Douglas. At a lecture in Pendleton, Indiana, an angry mob chased and beat Douglas before a local Quaker family, and the Hardys rescued him. His hand was broken in the attack. Douglas's best-known works is his first autobiography, Narrative of the Life of Frederick Douglass, an American Slave, published in 1845. Many people question whether a black man could have produced such an elegant piece of literature. The book received generally positive reviews and became an immediate bestseller. In 1848, Douglas was the only African American to attend the Seneca Falls Convention in upstate New York, at which women's rights were discussed. By the time of the Civil War, Douglas was one of the most famous black men in the country, known for his orations on the condition of the black race and any other issues such as women's rights. Douglas and the abolitionists argued that because the aim of the Civil War was to end slavery, African Americans should be allowed to engage in the fight for freedom. Douglas publicized this view in his newspapers and several speeches. Douglas conferred with President Abraham Lincoln in 1863 on the treatment of black soldiers and with President Andrew Johnson on the subject of black suffrage. In his last autobiography, The Life and Times of Frederick Douglass, Douglass referred to Lincoln as America's greatest president. Moreover, the post-war ratification of the 13th Amendment outlawed slavery. The 14th Amendment provided for citizenship and equal protection under the law. The 15th Amendment protected all citizens from being discriminated against in voting because of race. On February 20th, 1895, Douglass attended a meeting of the National Council of Women in Washington, D.C. During that meeting, he was brought to the platform and received a standing ovation. Shortly after, when he returned home, Douglass died of a massive heart attack. His funeral was held at the Metropolitan African Methodist Episcopal Church. Thousands passed by his coffin to show their respect.